Most people who can't pick one passion aren't confused. They're overloaded. They're not lacking direction. They're carrying too many directions at once, and the brain refuses to amputate any of them because each one feels like a version of self that deserves a chance. There's a key shift that changes everything, and it's not about choosing the right passion. It's about learning the difference between a passion and a container. Once that clicks, pressure drops, guilt loosens, and motivation stops leaking everywhere. If excitement flips into numbness the moment commitment shows up, that isn't laziness. It's a predictable psychological pattern. The multipotentialite pattern isn't "I like everything." It's "I can go deep in multiple directions, and I don't know how to do that in a world that demands a single label." A 27-year-old female product designer starts learning music production just for fun. 2 weeks later, she's watching cinematography breakdowns, outlining a short film idea, and researching how to launch a creative studio. Her notes app looks like 10 lives fighting for oxygen. Then Monday hits, meetings, messages, deadlines. She tries to pick one path, and her body reacts like she's being cornered. Tight chest, restlessness. Suddenly, every option feels wrong. She says, "I'm indecisive." But what's really happening is simpler. Her nervous system reads commitment as a threat. Threat of loss, threat of being trapped, threat of betraying the other selves that were starting to bloom. That trapped feeling matters, because avoidance is often less about the task and more about what the task represents. For multipotentialites, choosing one lane can feel like grief. Not dramatic grief, quiet grief. The kind where the mind mourns the person it won't become if one door closes. And there's another layer people rarely name: identity hunger. Each interest isn't just a hobby, it's an identity doorway. Writer, therapist, founder, researcher, athlete, artist. When nothing is chosen, every doorway stays open. The mind likes open doors because it avoids the pain of no. But open doors also leak energy. Everything feels possible, and nothing becomes real. Try a quick self-check. No overthinking. Just notice what lands. When choosing one path, does the body feel relief or constriction? When imagining 2 years with one craft, does the mind get curious or bargain for escape? When a plan gets scheduled into repeatable steps, does energy stay or go quiet? If that's familiar, nothing is wrong with the personality. It's a wiring and management issue. A brain optimized for possibility and pattern recognition can struggle with narrow repetition, especially when stress is already high. A common belief makes this worse: the idea that the problem is not having found a true passion yet. It sounds comforting, but it turns life into a scavenger hunt. Every interest becomes a suspect. Every plateau becomes proof the wrong thing was chosen. Research and motivation and expertise often suggests passion is built over time. Interest sparks, skill grows, meaning follows. Waiting for a single passion to arrive fully formed can trap someone in permanent tryout mode. Here's the counterintuitive truth. Some minds use variety as regulation, not distraction, regulation. Switching domains can function like recovery, especially when daily life is high demand and low control. Exploration can be a way the nervous system searches for safety cues: autonomy, novelty, play, competence in progress. But variety only helps when it's structured. Variety backfires when it becomes a way to avoid the discomfort phase of mastery. The middle. The middle is where novelty fades, feedback gets real, and identity stops getting instant praise for starting. The middle is also where trust is built, and outcomes finally compound. So the goal isn't forcing a single identity. The goal is building an operating model. Start with a reframe. I'm built for multiple interests, so I need a system that makes them coherent. Systems beat shame every time. Here's what tends to be happening under the hood. First, opportunity cost sensitivity. When many futures are easy to imagine, the loss of each one becomes emotionally vivid. Decisions feel heavy, not because they're illogical, but because the mind can feel the cost in advance. Second, identity fusion. The pull isn't only to do the thing, it's to be the kind of person who does the thing. Choosing one can feel like rejecting the others, which can feel like self-rejection. Third, reward timing. New interests pay fast. Quick novelty, quick learning, quick progress. Staying pays slow. Delayed rewards, deeper frustration tolerance. When baseline stress is high, the brain prefers the faster reward because it's trying to stabilize. Fourth, environment mismatch. If daily life feels rigid or controlled, interests become a way to reclaim autonomy. The more confined the environment, the more the mind generates escape lives. That's why just commit often fails. It doesn't address the mechanism. It tries to overpower it. Now the hinge. Passions aren't the unit to choose. Containers are. A passion is an interest. A container is a structure that can hold multiple interests without collapsing life. A container could be a flexible career path, a business, a creative channel, a role built around projects, or a theme that stays stable while the problems rotate. When the container is right, different interests stop competing. They start cooperating. So instead of asking, which passion should be chosen? Ask, what container can hold these passions long enough for them to compound? Choosing a container doesn't mean choosing one interest forever. It means choosing the stage where interests can take turns without destroying momentum. To find that stage, start mapping patterns, not titles. Notice stable drives. What repeats across different interests? Explaining, building, organizing chaos, making things beautiful, helping people feel safe, competing, creating systems, translating complexity, solving puzzles. The interests change, the drive stays. Notice energizers and drainers. Some activities are interesting, but leave the body foggy. Others leave the mind clearer 2 hours later. The body usually knows what the ego can't admit yet. And notice constraints. Time, responsibilities, money, the need for stability, tolerance for uncertainty, baseline stress. Constraints aren't enemies. They're guardrails that protect the system from turning into a permanent draft. A useful clue is the jealousy signal, the clean, sharp envy towards someone's work, not the bitter kind, the informative kind. I want to be able to do that. Then ask one question. Is it their output or their lifestyle? Those are different desires, and mixing them creates confusion. Here's where most people make a mistake. They try to rank passions like a competition. That creates internal war. A better approach is a portfolio with rotation. The principle is simple. Multiple passions are fine across a year. The problem is trying to honor all of them in a week. A rotation plan sends safety cues to the nervous system. Nothing is being killed off, just scheduled. When nothing feels stolen, commitment stops feeling like a trap. Start with the minimum viable version. 5 minutes. Pick one active lane for the next 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks, short enough that the mind won't panic. Long enough to get real feedback. Then pick one maintenance lane, 10 minutes twice a week, purely to keep that identity door open. Everything else gets parked without guilt. Not rejected, just cued. 2 weeks isn't meant to solve life. It's meant to rebuild trust with choosing. Now the standard version, a 90-day sprint. Choose one container project, not a life identity. A project has edges. Projects feel safer to the brain than permanent labels. Make it specific enough to finish, but flexible enough to include sub-interests. Instead of become a filmmaker, create a short film scene portfolio. Instead of become a psychologist, build a series that explains psychology through stories. Instead of become a founder, ship a simple tool that solves one clear problem. During the sprint, use one rule that multipotentialites thrive with: allowed variation, fixed cadence, variety inside the work, stability in the schedule. Pick 3 work blocks per week. The days can change if needed, but the rhythm stays. The brain learns, this is safe, this is repeatable. Now, the upgrade version, For high performers, build a two-track life on purpose. One track is the core container, what builds reputation, income, deep skill, long-term compounding. The second track is the wild track, where exploration stays alive without being forced to carry the entire weight of identity and survival. A lot of suffering comes from demanding every interest do everything. Money, meaning, status, community, self-esteem, novelty, purpose, all at once. That's too much pressure. Two tracks lowers emotional load. Core gets depth. Wild gets oxygen. A simple ratio helps. 4 days of energy toward the core, 2 days toward the wild, 1 day for recovery. It doesn't have to match a perfect calendar. It's a guiding balance. Now, the fear that usually shows up. If the perfect thing isn't chosen, time will be wasted. That fear often hides perfectionism. It sounds like optimization, but it behaves like fear of regret, fear of settling, fear of being ordinary. The mind tries to make the decision so perfect that loss is never felt. But the only way to reduce regret is to make choices real enough to learn from. Clarity doesn't arrive in advance, it arrives after action. So use decision rules, not endless introspection. Choose the path that creates the most future options after 90 days, not the one that feels most exciting in fantasy, the one that produces skills, connections, and proof that can transfer elsewhere. And choose what can be sustained on the worst week, not the best week. When baseline stress is high, friction tolerance is low. Designing for the worst week is self-respect, and it prevents burnout cycles. A 22-year-old male engineering student keeps bouncing between AI research, fitness coaching, and writing. Every attempt to choose one triggers anxiety and a weird collapse in follow-through. Instead, he runs a 90-day container project, one clear essay per week explaining an AI concept to beginners. That container lets him research like a scientist, teach like a coach, and write like a creator, all in one coherent output. By week 6, he still isn't certain about his entire life, but something more valuable happens. Traction, self-trust. The identity shifts from someone who can't choose to someone who ships. That identity shift is the real turning point. One more trap needs to be named: the collector problem. Collecting interests can feel like becoming. Watching videos, buying gear, saving courses, building elaborate plans. It reduces uncertainty, so it feels productive. But it doesn't build the skill. If preparation becomes the main activity, it's often avoidance of the vulnerability of being a beginner, especially under internal pressure to be exceptional. The antidote is gentle: output. Output means producing something outside the head: a page, a recording, a sketch, a prototype, a lesson taught to one person, something saved. Output turns identity fantasy into skill reality. It also reveals which interests survive contact with effort. Use a simple forcing function, the 2-hour proof. Pick one interest and give it 2 hours of real output across 2 days. No research, no shopping, no planning. Output only. Write 800 words. Build a tiny feature. Make a 60-second music loop. Design one complete mock-up. Record a 5-minute explanation. Then ask, do you feel more alive and curious afterward, or drained and relieved to stop? That answer is more honest than day one excitement. Now, back to the middle, because this is where the pattern either evolves or repeats. The middle feels boring for a reason. Early learning gives constant feedback. Later progress becomes subtle. That means a new reward system is needed: pride in craft, meaning, contribution, community, visible progress. Create a progress signal that can't be argued with. Number of sessions completed, number of outputs saved, number of experiments run. Feelings fluctuate. Signals don't. Use social reinforcement responsibly, not for approval, for follow-through. A simple weekly message to one trusted person works. Here's what got shipped. No judgment, just proof. And anchor, meaning before each session, 10 seconds, not hype. Adult, meaning, I'm practicing finishing. I'm building a transferable skill stack. I'm creating something useful. Meaning is a nervous system cue. It tells the brain discomfort has a reason. Now sharpen the container idea into one test. A container answers 3 questions. What gets done repeatedly? Who does it help? How does it compound? If an interest can't answer those, it may still be valid. It just belongs on the wild track. The core container should be something that can be returned to even when motivation dips, not because it's easy, but because it fits stable drives. When the fit is right, discipline stops feeling like self-violence and starts feeling like alignment plus structure. So here's the 4-week experiment that makes this real. Choose an active lane and define one container project small enough to finish in 90 days. Make it one clean sentence. If it can't be said simply, it's too vague. Establish cadence, 3 sessions per week. Reduce friction, tools ready, clear starting point. The first 5 minutes should be almost effortless. End each session with something saved. Not perfect, saved. Quantity over polish. The finisher muscle grows through repetition. Then review without self-attack. What energized? What resisted? Was resistance boredom, fear, or overload? Boredom needs variety inside the work. Fear needs smaller exposure steps. Overload needs constraints to be honored. And keep maintenance intentional. 10 minutes twice a week for one secondary interest. That small touch is identity care. It tells the nervous system, we're not trapped. When that safety cue is present, depth becomes easier. You don't need a single passion that cancels every other desire. You need a container that can hold range, a cadence that turns interest into skill, and a rotation plan that keeps the mind from feeling cornered. This isn't flakiness, it's unmanaged breadth. Pick one priority for now, not forever. Give it a container, give it a cadence, let other selves breathe in maintenance mode. Then ship something small, something real, and let proof replace pressure. Drop a comment with the 2 interests that keep competing, and one container project that could let them cooperate for 90 days. The old advice was built for a world where you picked one lane, stayed in it, and slowly became the person who does that. But the future doesn't reward single-lane certainty the way it used to. It rewards people who can move across domains without losing credibility. People who can learn fast, translate between groups, and build things that don't fit inside one job title.